What happens when two strangers with completely different opinions meet for dinner? In this brand new social experiment, people from all walks of life are paired up with their direct opposite.
My sparring partner.
And guided through a menu of questions specifically designed to promote discussion, disagreement and debate. Will they agree to disagree?
I don't ever want to have kids.
I'd love to move us from a country of whingers to a country of doers.
And what do you do?
I'm a pastor.
Could they end up bonding over shared life experiences?
So if someone's willing to hear my opinion, then I am open to hearing theirs as well.
There's times that I'd love to have a good cry.
Or will it be fireworks from the get-go?
We're not compatible at all.
What will happen to those people when they realise their loved ones are now burning in the pits of hellfire?
You should never, ever say something like that.
This is Eating with the Enemy. The diners making their way to this restaurant have all agreed to take part in a brand new social experiment. Each pairing has been selected due to their apparent differences. Over the course of their meal, thought-provoking questions will appear at the table to help guide the conversation.
Have your priorities changed over the years?
Do you believe a woman has the right to choose?
What's the most outrageous thing you've ever done?
Jeez.
Wow, that's a question.
Watching on, two experts will observe the interaction of so-called enemies debating life's big questions.
The concept of a dystopian future where robots are feeding us our information is not something of sci-fi, it's here with our algorithms. That's problematic because you're not hearing another point of view. And what those algorithms also do is they feed you the worst of the opposition.
The drawback is that you don't get exposure to conflicting pieces of information, which really help to make you a more well-rounded person. Eating with the Enemy encourages people to be accountable for their points of view, whereas social media just lets them off the hook.
With everything prepped and ready to go, let's meet the diners.
My name is Martin. I'm 54 years old and I'm from Finglas. I work with Pavy Point. It's a national NGO that's committed to the attainment of human rights for travellers and Roma. I'm very passionate about issues of injustice and poverty. People who frustrate me are people who are smug, arrogant, and people who are not open to being challenged or persuaded. I think really tough, challenging issues can be aired, but it can be done in a way without demonising the other person.
Well, let's see if Martin's dinner companion is in fact an angel or a demon.
My name is John, I'm 36 years old. I'm originally from Monaghan, but I live in Tipperary. I like to argue and debate and tease out ideas. That can make me, I think, sometimes annoying to people. I'm an absolutist on free speech. I don't think you have to respect every opinion. You can disrespect an opinion, you can argue against it passionately, and that's what you should do. But in a society that is healthy and functioning, people are going to be upset all the time. And I think when we go down the road of saying that opinions shouldn't be heard, there's a problem.
How are you doing?
Hello, how are you?
Grand, not a bother yourself?
I'm grand, Martin.
Good.
You and me sparred on the radio a few times over the years.
We did.
I thought as much, yeah.
We did spar a few times, all right.
Probably
yeah.
a second. Well, it's good to meet in the flesh.
No, well, same here. I don't know John personally, although we were on a couple of radio programmes over the years. And I think sometimes he came across, I'd have to say, a little bit obnoxious.
If you'd said to me, Martin from Pavy Point, I'm going to be honest, I would have said, don't really like that guy.
It's time to kick things off with a question.
Well, what stereotype do you think you live up to? Do you want me to go first, or do you want to go first?
I'll give you the honours, John, please.
So, I think I sometimes live up to the stereotype of the middle-class white man. Do you know, as a child, I never went hungry a day in my life.
Yeah.
I never wondered where my next clothes were coming from. Do you know, I grew up in a very normal...
privileged background. I think he would lack credibility if he was in any way to contest or deny his white middle-class privilege and all the benefits that brings. My upbringing, John, is certainly in stark contrast to yours. I have very vivid memories of poverty. There was times there was lots of food. There was other times I went to school, quite honestly, hungry, went to bed hungry.
Being privileged when you grew up as a child doesn't always mean that you're wrong, it doesn't mean your ideas are wrong. But you do have to bear it in mind. Similarly, being from a background of disadvantage doesn't confer on you automatically being right.
Let's see who's next to take on their enemy.
My name is Tracy, I'm 31 and I'm from Dublin. The last couple of years I've been mothering my way through life. I am married. The most important thing in my life is definitely my family. We live with the 2 kids and our little cat Marcello. I am not a bitchy person. I'm not somebody who likes to talk about people behind their back. If you've nothing nice to say, then just say nothing at all. The kind of people that frustrate me would be judgmental people. So you're a mother, so you're in this box, based on what they think that world means. I wouldn't like to meet somebody who is very harsh in their opinions and that isn't open to even considering something that's a bit different to kind of how they see the world.
Who's here to have dinner with Tracy?
Hi.
Hi.
This is very exciting.
You're unreal.
Are you my enemy?
Oh, apparently. You look amazing.
Thank you so much. So do you. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Hopefully this isn't going to turn nasty. Let's drink to this.
Let's drink to this. Cheers.
The only way I could describe myself is an enigma. So my name is Davina Devine. I've been doing drag in Dublin for about 20 years now. Fabulous, darling. I'm not gonna lie, I am opinionated. I'm stubborn, I'm headstrong. I'm just gonna say hands up, I love a bitch. I just love the drama. My life is so extra crazy and nuts, and very mundane things like families and kids that are very needy or crying all the time. That really annoys me. Just stay away from my costumes. That's all I'm gonna say. Get your chocolate little hands away from my costumes. I want to have a conversation with my opposite because I like to chat and I like to trash things out. This is gonna be very interesting. I hope they're ready. Here we go. When someone meets you, what question do they always ask? People usually say, is that hair real? Or what height are you? Like, I understand, like, when you walk into a room, it's like you're gonna make a bit of an impact. Like, it's shocking, I think, on the eye. It's like an assault on the senses when you walk in, you know, because it's like got a big waft of perfume. This big 6-foot drag queen walks in. So I think people usually ask something really simple like that.
I don't have a drag queen in my direct social circle, but I want one. I think there was a moment where I was intimidated because she just has this incredible confidence about her. What do you work at? Like, people say that to me, like, what do you do? What do you do? So I'm a digital content creator, so digital media, writing, all things internet. I have kids, so I'm like not a stay-at-home mom. I'm not a working mom. I'm in the middle, I'm a work-from-home mom. Like at the school gate, it's kind of like, oh, you're just at home, are you? And I'm like, well, first of all, stay-at-home moms are not just at home. Like, it's the hardest job in the world.
We literally are worlds apart. She came across maybe a little bit timid, I suppose. I'm a bit more, dare I say, reckless. I just wouldn't have the nerves to be a parent. Like, I think it's great that people do it, but it's just, it's not for me. I just don't have that maternal or paternal, like, feeling. You know, when, like, someone goes, oh, look at little baby Eilish with, like, you know, her little red shoes. I'm like, I just don't give a shit.
We form our opinions in various ways. Our experiences growing up have a lot to do with it, the belief systems of those closest to us, and also the depth of knowledge we have about a particular topic.
While this may not be John and Martin's first time debating big issues, will the cosy atmosphere of a restaurant make any difference?
What does freedom of speech mean to you?
Well, first of all, freedom of speech is obviously sacrosanct, and I will defend it right to the end. But freedom of speech is not an absolute right. There has to be some qualifications. In other words, free speech, I don't think, gives anybody the license to incite hatred or violence. Because vulnerable minorities who are experiencing exclusion and racism, they need to be protected. 2 years ago, a young man in Kerry posted on Facebook, baby knackers should be used as fish bait. He also went on to say, reserve Monday afternoons to hunt down knackers.
What should happen to him?
Well, nothing happened to him. He was brought to court. He was identified.
But what should happen to him?
I think there has to be some sanctions, probably depending on the severity of the comments. There may be imprisonment or a fine, depending on the level of, or the gravity of the comments.
See,
but there has to be a sanction.
I have to say, I mean, freedom of speech is not freedom of speech if there's a potential penalty for saying something. That is limited speech. That is, you can say something unless it is so offensive that we decide to lock you up. I think the way to combat that, man, is to say, you, sir, are a bloody idiot. And no individual should ever say what you have said, and you should never, ever say something like that.
John will never be a victim of hate speech or hate crime. So if you don't experience the issue, and you don't live the issue, and you're not impacted by the issue, then obviously I think that would influence your outlook and your perspective.
I, as a white, straight, middle-class man, am not regularly subjected to hate speech. Martin's community are. I understand completely why he wants to criminalise some thoughts or some words. I completely get it. I understand it. I still don't agree with it. I don't think it's the right way for society to go.
This restaurant has invited a group of strangers to have dinner with their opposite. During their meal, a conversation menu of questions will cut through the small talk and introduce some hot topics. Who's next to join the fun?
My name is Roger. I'm an occasional lecturer in sociology and I'm living in Dublin. I went vegan in 1979 and I'm a rights-based advocate. Our mode of social change is education. A lot of people kind of think veganism is a diet, which is a misreading of what it is. You could say that the vegan movement is part of the peace movement. In fact, it was started in the Second World War. I wouldn't like to sit across from somebody who's very opinionated and maybe their values are rather shallow. There are some people who just want to make bacon jokes, and there's not much you can do with that kind of person, so you just have to move on.
Who's here to have dinner with Roger?
My name is Louise and I'm a dairy farmer from Limerick. I'm really passionate about providing the highest care for my animals. I tend to fill my spare time with probably drawing silage and machinery, macra and meetings outside of the farm. I was actually the reigning Queen of the Land in 2018. It's kind of like the Rose of Tralee, but more kind of a farmer version. The type of people that frustrate me are those that have opinions without all the facts. I want people to see that dairy farmers aren't all that bad.
Hiya.
Hi, I'm Louise.
Yeah, I'm Roger. How are you doing?
Good, now you?
Not too bad. This is interesting, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It's very different.
Thanks very much. Oh, right,
Okay,
here we
first
go.
question.
What do you think about the speed of change happening in the world? I mean, obviously technology is driving that, isn't it?
Oh, definitely, yeah.
I mean, in your business, have you got a lot of technical things coming in?
We would. My job, as a dairy farmer, you don't ideally need all the technology, but it does makes the job a lot easier, and it makes us more efficient.
I'm a vegan. You know the old joke that you always know there's a vegan in the room because they'll tell you. So I suppose I must have lived up to that stereotype.
Usually my interactions with vegans would be quite negative. I'm cruel to my animals, that I don't look after them. I'm only farming for profit.
We tend to judge people immediately on how they look, how they dress, how they present themselves, how they sound. That comes from our evolutionary past. When we feel threatened, we go into a much more closed position to protect ourselves.
Body language can very often reveal how we truly feel in a situation. So our gestures, our facial expression, our eye contact can reveal maybe that we're not so comfortable, whereas we might pretend that we are.
How have your priorities changed over the years? I'm not gonna lie, like from a young age, I definitely wanted to be a mother. Like I was the oldest of 5, so like I was always a bit of a mother hen.
I don't ever want to have kids. I'm kind of selfish in that way. I couldn't see myself having to think about another little person. I have a dog, and that is enough for me.
That's
like even,
hardcore.
and that's like, and she's epileptic, so it's like I feel like I'm on like, yeah, she's like little English bulldog. But with a child, I'd be like up the walls.
And like, would anything change your mind for having kids?
No, kids will be a deal breaker. Like, I think with children, it's like, it's a full-time job. There's no downtime. You don't get that 15-minute break with kids. Being very drained like that is just not appealing to me. I find that like stressful even thinking about it. Sometimes like you'll be at events and people will come up to you with a baby and kind of like get a picture of the baby. I'm like one of those Halloween memes, you know, where you're like,
yeah,
you know, like it's like
afraid.
it's like this weird. It's like we just don't. We're not compatible at all.
In your world. Always felt like from a young age I had that kind of maternal instinct, whereas Davina just feels like she's allergic to it. So, I mean, that's a pretty fundamental difference in our personalities. Oh, interesting. So should restaurants be a child-free zone?
Maybe bring your family to like a family restaurant. You know, if
Yeah.
you're gonna like having your foie gras or whatever, like, you know, you don't want a screaming brat in the corner causing havoc.
So what would you do in that situation? Like if you were out for dinner and you were like with your friend or something and there's a baby screaming, like how?
Do you know what? How I think if that was happening, how I instinctively would act, I would keep staring. It would really like just be bubbling in me.
I'm probably going to be a bit controversial here now,
Okay.
right? Because I do find eating out with my own children incredibly stressful.
Oh wow.
So when we go out, like on a date night, me and my husband,
Yeah.
I'm like actively seeking the places
That have no
that there
kids.
are no families.
I'm glad you say that because loads of people will be like, yes, I should be able to bring my child out. And yeah, you should be, but also everyone else deserves, like, they're eating out too, they're paying the bill, they deserve a little bit of quiet and time away.
And it's gas, that wouldn't even enter my... You're saying that now and I'm like, oh, I never even thought of that.
When human beings connect with each other, it can lead to them developing empathy for the other person's point of view, and it can help them see things in a different way.
They're saying to themselves, I know you, I know what you're about, I know where you come from. All of these things are going on within tenths of a second, and there's a neural pathway that's connected that says, we are similar.
Martin and John are still debating hate speech legislation.
When you actually get the police involved and say it is now criminal to express an opinion, I don't think that guy's opinion goes away.
Okay, let me give you this scenario. At the moment, there's a debate taking place around introducing in hate crime what's called an aggravating factor.
Yeah.
So let's say, for example, I'm attacked on the street, right? But if it can be established that I was attacked also because of my ethnic identity, I'm asking you now, should the judge have the capability to consider that as an aggravating factor when it comes to sentencing?
Absolutely not.
Why?
I'll tell you what, because it's thought crime. Because it implies that what was criminal was not me attacking you, but what I was thinking. Let's say, for example, it was me. Let's say I took a baseball bat to you tomorrow, and I didn't say a word. I just beat you up. You don't know what I was thinking in my head. But let's say you're back 10 years and you found on John's Facebook, I don't like travellers. I don't. And then you present that as evidence to the judge and say, look, this guy, ready a crime, by the way, I'm going to jail anyway in this scenario.
Yes.
Beat me up with a baseball bat, and he said 10 years ago he doesn't like travellers.
Yeah.
Then the crime is not me attacking you with a baseball bat. The crime is what I thought when I did it.
But then
it's thought crime. It's not hate crime. It's the crime of thinking something that's
I would
criminal.
respectfully disagree. Hate crime is an issue, this is a concern, and I've been a victim of it myself. But can I ask you a question? If the law can't be used, or should not be used, as a deterrent, in your opinion then, how can we combat hate speech and hate crime?
It's got to be education. It's got to be conversations like this.
I think sometimes people think he disagrees with me, he's evil. He disagrees with hate speech laws. He must hate himself. Do you know, sometimes our motivations get called into question on both sides of this debate. I think it's important that our motivations are openly discussed and honestly heard across a dinner table. It's a lot easier than doing it across a doll chamber where two people are shouting and roaring at each other.
When we feel outraged, there is this tendency to cancel other people, where somebody might say something you don't agree with, and you instantly become offended and decide that you're going to react against that.
We all are consumed with now being right. We have to be right. There's something very wrong with how right we must all be and how we must all share the one opinion.
What happens in this cancel culture is that we don't get the opportunity to actually hear the opposing viewpoint in any depth. We've cancelled them, so we're not listening to them, and this is really at the detriment of society going forward.
How are things going at Louise and Roger's table?
Is meat murder? Presumably you wouldn't react too well to that phrase, would you?
I wouldn't think that calling the production of meat as murder would be accurate. To me, murder is the act of killing something inhumanely. I know that in animal production, everything is done to be humane to the animal and give it a good life while it is here.
It is really a kind of rhetorical slogan within the movement. And of course, you know, a lot of people react to the word murder because they associate that with humans only.
I do think vegans use overly emotive languages at times, and it made me feel uncomfortable because I know what the vegan stance is behind that statement.
Vegans love farmers. It's just a question of some farmers do things which we regard as rights violations.
Irish farms aren't viewed mainly as businesses, they're family farms.
It is a business though, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
They are family-owned businesses, and part of that family is actually the animals themselves.
Do you give them names?
Some of them would have names, yeah, I would have pets.
So what do you feel about sending family members to slaughter?
I'm not rearing them to be slaughtered.
What about when they're spent?
At the end of their days, that's the humane way of ending their life, essentially.
Human euthanasia? Are you in favour of that?
If that's the person's choice.
But that's where the difference is, isn't it? Because the cows are not volunteering, are they?
Busy mum Tracy and drag queen Deina have been discussing the pros and cons of parenthood.
How do people with children change? So what do you...
Well, I've lost so many friends to people having kids. Their whole, persona is gone. But I always kind of feel a little bit of resentment because I feel abandoned because your friend has moved on. And I've lost so many kind of friends over the years that have just kind of disappeared or kind of, they've just got lost in motherhood or whatever, so...
Believe it or not, you are conscious of your friends that don't have kids and wanting to be available to them in the way you always were, but you're not.
You kind of need to not lose yourself in it, but at the same time, it's such a defining thing.
That's
so
the thing,
where's the halfway point? I think for all women maybe that have babies or come into motherhood, I think that is a real thing that people maybe do lose themselves. I felt like when we were talking that she was also seeing the fact that she had kind of left a part of herself behind as well. Sometimes it does feel like a bit of a breakup. Time passes and time, the child has grown and you're, coming to grips with the new situation. Yeah. And then meanwhile, someone else's life is new things are happening for them and the ships are passing in the night.
That's I'm having a penny drop moment here because I've lost friends in the last maybe 7 or 8 years of my life. And I've never considered that maybe what happened there was actually me becoming a mother is what separated us.
Yeah.
Deina talked about losing friends through motherhood, their priorities changing and stuff. It definitely made me think about some of my friendships in the past, and I can see it from both sides now, how you can just drift. It's one of the lesser talked about things about becoming a mother. Everything changes. Your sense of self changes.
When I become a mother.
You didn't want to have kids. We have a new question. What moment in life made you who you are today?
Yes, tell, girl.
Hand on heart, it does sound quite cliched, but the moment I met my son,
wow,
all of my worlds collided in that moment. It was just absolutely incredible.
Being honest, what was going through my head was just that she had such an amazing experience. From what she said, it was life-changing. And I kind of felt a little bit jealous in a way that I was kind of, not because of the childbirth, but just because I'm never going to get to experience that. I love to experience life, and I think that is life in its purest form, isn't it?
Time now to meet our final diners of the evening.
My name is Ali. Originally, I come from Egypt, but I have been living in this country for about 21 years. My kind heart, that's my best quality. I give lectures and I write books and articles. I don't like people who speak their minds and close their ears. I always believe that it has to be two-way traffic. But the most important thing is that you express your opinion in a way that shows respect for others.
While Ali gets comfortable, his dinner companion is on the way.
Hello. My name is Michael. I am 65 years of age and I'm from Tonsilla. Everybody has the right to their personal opinion. But if you are going to offer opinions, then you have a duty to offer some sort of evidence as to why you hold those beliefs. Put your ideas out there, see how they go. Hello.
How are you?
How are you?
Good, thanks.
I am Michael.
Michael, nice to meet you. Ali
And
is my
nice to
name.
meet you too.
Thank you very much.
I recognised Ali, and I've seen him speaking on behalf of the Muslim community on a number of times.
Michael, what is your peer group like? The question is for you.
The question is for me. Very well played, I have to say. What would my peer group be? I think my peer group would be working class people who go to work for a living, get on with their lives, have families, and respect for other people as well.
Well, then I believe I am one of your peer group.
Well, isn't that? Well, I think that's decent, yeah.
I believe respect does not mean that you have to share my set of values, but you have to accept that I am entitled to choose my set of values and I live thereby.
We may have different ideas, we may have different perspectives, but we certainly allow other people to have theirs and practice them. That's a natural human right. Everybody has that right.
What emotionally challenging thing are you working through these days?
Mostly challenging thing. My God.
I'm not somebody who genuinely not somebody who gets emotional about things very much. It's just not criticizing people who do. I'm just a bit reserved, I suppose.
Right,
you know?
It's not a manly thing, is it, to get emotional?
Yeah, there's a degree of that. There is a degree of that. I mean, I won't deny it. There's a degree of, I mean, I was brought up in a world where boys don't cry. And that's not, no parent ever said to me, by the way, boys don't cry. No teacher ever said to me, boys don't cry.
But it's subliminal.
But boys who did cry, you know, would have gotten a kicking. Do you know what I mean?
Well, I would even go a step further. I mean, there's times there I actually would love to cry a bit more. And I can't. Whatever way I'm wired, I can get emotional, but I can't bring it to the next stage where there's times there I'd love to have a good cry.
Do you know, I cry at movies, I have to say, which is weird because, God forbid, people close to me, family members have died in the past.
Yeah.
And I feel, Joe, almost obligated. I should be shedding tears here. I'm not.
Yeah.
And then, weirdly, do you know, a movie will come on, like, what's that one, The Notebook?
Right.
And I blubber at the end of it.
So I've seen The Notebook like 6 times. And it gets me every single time. Like, it's terrible. The bit at the end with the Alzheimer's, it's awful.
I don't know why that is, because it's very strange, because that's not me in real life at all, but I'll blubber at fictional things.
How have your priorities changed over the years?
It's an interesting question, that. I mean, I suppose I'm kind of mainly known as a vegan activist, and so I've been vegan since 1979. So I've been kind of doing this for a long time now. I'm come up to 42 years in January. But I've been involved in the social movement aspect of it. So I suppose my priorities have been pretty stable. Have your priorities changed over the years?
I suppose my priorities would be changing. I'm at that age where I'm 3 years out of college, 3 years into my career, things like that.
Is it unusual as it were, to be a female farmer nowadays? It's not, is it, surely?
It's becoming less unusual. I know I have lots of friends that are female farmers or whatever, and they've had a lot worse experiences, you know, business people not wanting to deal with them, you know, looking for the boss, things like that.
To sit down with a female dairy farmer, it's not what you'd expect as a, the typical, stereotypical dairy farmer you'd expect a man in that sense. So from a sociological point of view, that's a really interesting feminist position. She is kind of breaking a few kind of gender rules by just being a female farmer. And so that was fascinating.
For Ali and Michael, it's time for some food and some provocative questions.
Does religion do more harm than good?
Of course, religion does everything good.
I'm not sure whether you know it or not, but I am not religious. I am an atheist.
I can live with people of any faith or no faith as long as They allow me to have the faith that I choose and practice it.
Often, atheists get accused of just not wanting to allow people to have religious ideas, and that's absolutely not true.
Well, thank you very much for saying that, because yes, I had this impression, you see, that atheists, they want to be atheists, but they want to deny others the right to choose.
It's a human right to express yourself religiously. Equally, non-religious people have a right to constructively criticize some of those beliefs. And there are many aspects of religion that I simply don't understand, I don't comprehend, and I simply can't work out for myself. But I would say the evidence points to probably there is no God.
Religion, it comes from God. It can't cause us any harm because it is coming from God, our Creator, who has made us and who knows about us.
Ali,
But
to
if my
say that
religion-
we are creators of a deity,
Yeah,
plainly, the
Yes.
evidence is that we are not.
You see them as facts.
Evolution of humanity is a fact.
You see them as facts. I don't see them as facts.
You're
No,
saying that
what I-
evolution is not a fact?
No, what I'm saying, there was the Big Bang, you say, but actually the Big Bang was made by God. Looking at the stars, the moon, the galaxy, everything around us, I can clearly see the light of God shining in every aspect of this universe.
We have perfectly good explanations for the development of galaxies, Earth, human bodies. I don't agree with almost everything that you just said there. People of faith believe in something without necessarily having proof for that. And that doesn't cut it for me. If we're going to believe in something, there should be some sort of evidence. I believe that there are perfectly plausible scientific explanations as to how we arrived where we are. The more we develop knowledge, the more knowledgeable we become. And the more knowledgeable we become, the more, in my case, that I reject the superstitious nonsense that went before that. I reject it.
In a debate, a power struggle tends to surface, and people can act in various different roles.
This tends to happen because one person is more dominant in the conversation, and when this manifests itself, the other person becomes more submissive and quiet.
We all have opinions, and that's okay, but it's how we express those opinions that really counts.
When someone comes into a conversation with a very fixed or polarized idea, it is very obvious, and it shuts down discourse because the other person in the conversation realizes that there's going to be no movement or there's going to be nothing heard.
For Tracy and Davina, their meal has come to an end.
And finally, what did you learn today? Today I learned that it's nice sometimes to let control go and to kind of just see where things go.
Yeah.
It's, for me, like I'm a bit of a control freak like that.
Yeah.
So I've learned today to let the conversation flow as opposed to dominate it. I actually really enjoyed the conversation because she's very articulate and she made me think about things in a kind of different way. It just made me be a little bit more maybe aware of what's going on, because I think motherhood for people is very different for all mothers. So I think have a little bit more empathy.
I think for me, it's been really humbling to meet somebody who I feel like I actually have loads in common with. But yet our futures and our view of the world in loads of ways is different. The one thing I've learned from eating with the enemy is you never really know what's going on in someone else's life. When you just take away social media and all of that and just sit face to face talking to somebody, it can be very inspiring.
I think my lifestyle and my story is just a bit more hedonistic. Tracy's maybe is a safer kind of maybe sweet story, and mine is maybe a little bit wild and a little bit sour. I would love to see Tracy again without her kids.
While Michael and Ali may have very different views on religion, can they reach any common ground on life's other big questions?
Have you experienced grief, and how did it change you?
Okay, well, look, thankfully, in fairness, I haven't experienced a lot of grief. I mean, I lost my father 20 odd years ago. I lost my mother only this year, so I mean, that was grief enough, the loss of those.
Do you think you're going to meet your father again, or that's it?
Oh no, I'm not going to meet my father again.
Once
My
he passed
father,
away, he's passed away.
father lived and my father died.
So death marked the end of that journey between you and your father, and for good.
Well, it marks the end of his journey.
When Michael spoke about grief and that he would not meet his father again, I felt very sad for him. The dearest person that I have lost was my grandmother. What makes me accept the fact that she's passed away is my firm belief that I'm going to meet her in the hereafter. When I meet somebody and he's an atheist, I always say thanks God, because I managed to see his light.
Not everybody goes to heaven. Both Islam and Christianity agree on this. It's conceivable that many people look forward to seeing their relatives in the next life. What will happen to those people when they realize that perhaps their relatives, their close ones, their loved ones, are now burning in the pits of hellfire? Do you think that a supreme being has the right to make a creation, and in some sense to make members of that creation faulty and punish them with hell? People of no faith live a life that is full and complete as well. The only thing about us is that we don't do it worrying about whether or not we are going to be punished in an afterlife.
You choose to live the life that you are living.
The question I asked you is
we
if,
take accountability.
The question I asked you is if God created us, and he knows everything and anything, so he knows we're going to be faulty. He knows that he has made somebody that will not have a good life and will burn in hell,
right,
and he still goes ahead and does it.
Right.
That to me is utterly immoral, and I cannot accept it. I reject God on that principle alone.
Listen to how
your answer was that we make choices.
You make your choice, and hence you take responsibility for that. I felt that Michael did not give me the chance to respond to him. But it is us who decide where to go by what we are doing.
No, Ali, you're saying that we make choices. I'm saying it is impossible to make a choice if the being that made us knows what we're going to do.
He could not accept that, well, there could be a different opinion about it.
What one thing do you wish you could go back and undo?
Wow. Oh, blimey. I think in my own terms, my relationship with my own children has not been great. So I'd try and undo that. I mean, I kind of openly admit that I've not been a good father, and so I suppose that would be something that you would regret.
I got the impression that it was a lonely life. He's dedicated himself to this movement, but I think his personal life has suffered because of it.
I go to more T-Rex gigs, if I could go back as well.
I suppose it's kind of similar to mine, I suppose, with having parents that were divorced, and I kind of naturally fell towards living with my father and staying with his side. My relationship with my mother would have suffered.
Have you got a stepmom?
Yeah, I do.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
Do you get on, or is that way too personal?
Oh no, we do. We get on very well.
All right.
She's more like one of my best friends, really, than she is a stepmom.
And finally, what do you like about your conversation partner?
I like two important things you said. You see, I like the word respect, because for me, respect is a cornerstone of coexistence among people, all people. I share that, like you see, like here we have a believer and an atheist, and they have this common ground between them, you see.
Isn't it very good? The one thing that I've learned from eating with the enemy is the common decency of people. We may be of opposing ideas, but at the back of it all, we're still human beings, and it is so important to be able to have a rational, open and honest debate. Well, I have to say, Ali, I enjoyed chatting with you. I mean, we are both respectful of each other personally, and that's really nice, and I like that. And it's easy to talk with you. I suppose if anything surprised me, it was the depth of his faith. And you're a great
I'm glad you said it's easy to talk to me.
Even if we do have almost opposite beliefs in nearly everything that we discuss.
It made me a firmer believer in my religion.
It's so refreshing to have ideas and to bounce them off someone who doesn't share those ideas, because, you know, it makes you stand up for your ideas. You know, do they pass muster? I don't know. It's challenging.
Conversation is vitally important, and more important than ever in our society, because it's what allows us to feel connected to another person. When we hear and when we express our points of view, all of that is so important to our sense of well-being.
Everyone has come here today to be part of an experiment, open to meeting somebody with a different point of view. And that's a very brave and courageous thing to do. And hopefully it may have made them see things a little bit differently.
And finally, what do you think about your dinner companion?
I quite liked actually how open you were. You know, you did listen to my opinion, and even though...
I didn't call you a murderer.
No. I did like Roger. I thought he was a lovely companion for dinner, and we had a great conversation, minus the couple of disagreements.
There are some vegans who certainly wouldn't sit down with a dairy farmer, but in terms of bringing about change, it's not necessarily an educational thing to do to actually, you know, create a barrier between you and everybody else.
I've had vegans call me an extremist and all these names, and I don't like that, so I'm not going to do that to somebody else. I just don't think it's fair. I'd like to treat people how I'd like to be treated. So if someone's willing to hear my opinion, then I am open to hearing theirs as well.
I found Louise, you know, engaging, interesting, open, but we disagreed on the fundamentals. So there's no kind of meeting of minds in that sense. She does something that I would object to, and she probably doesn't totally understand where I'm coming from.
I really enjoyed the conversation, but I don't think it's made me think about anything differently. It's just reinforced what I believe myself.
It's interesting how you can look at the same thing from a different angle, isn't it?
Definitely.
The exploiter and the liberator.
I'm not going to agree on that one.
For Martin and John, the essence of a debate is something they're both very familiar with.
I think sometimes there's a general sense that your public persona is you, the person. I mean, both of us have done public debates, you on travelling issues, me on abortion, and sometimes people say, oh, you hate women. I mean, nothing could be further than the truth.
Yeah.
Do you know, the women in my life have only ever influenced it for the better. So that is hurtful, because politics is not, for me, and never has been, personal. Maybe that is because at the beginning, as I said, I grew up in an area where I was quite privileged. Politics is theoretical. I'm aware of that, but I think theory has a place.
It's not about, you know, denigrating people. It's not about insulting people. It's not about disrespecting people. There are a certain set of values which should inform a conversation. Listening, hearing, and respecting. Not necessarily agreeing.
I think we have a shared understanding of how difficult it can be to be understood by the majority, in that sometimes we both feel like our point of view is not being heard, or that people don't understand where we're coming from.
As I said, we're all human beings, and there has to be room for new perspectives, new learning, and for people to change their opinions and change their perspectives. Just because I hold a certain perspective now, or a certain view of the world, doesn't necessarily mean, or shouldn't mean, that in 10 years' time, I may or may not.
And I agree with that. But I also think it's important to give people the space to not change their views.
Yeah.
Sometimes people are expected to change their opinions overnight, or not, or face being called bigoted.
There is no substitute for human interaction, for people actually meeting face to face, over a table, over a coffee, over a beer, having that direct engagement and dialogue. I think you just get a lot more.